All right, let's talk about number 3. So we're talking about structuring the offer. We talked about price. We talked about occupancy. The third one for me is looking at the 2 huge contingencies, okay? They are the inspection and the appraisal, okay? I want to give you guys just things to consider. It's up to you, and every situation is different. I don't want you leaving this and saying, oh my gosh, Brandon's telling me to do this, that, or the other thing. I'm just giving you things to consider so you don't become a commodity in an industry where realtors are being commoditized every day, and there are billions of dollars being pumped in our industry to get rid of all of you. So I'm trying to help you become more savvy. Okay, so there's my little disclaimer, Mr. Frost. But here's what I recommend, because most realtors don't think about things like this. So what are the 2 big, huge, massive contingencies? I just told you, we've got inspection, we've got an appraisal. Well, what if there was a world that you could write the offer and waive both contingencies while protecting the buyer at the same time? Now, most of you should be saying, okay, well, tell me more. How do you do that? I'm going to tell you right now. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now. One is, let's pretend you go to a showing. Buyer says, okay, this is the one. We like this one. We want to write an offer. Okay, here's something to consider. Well, the first strategy is to schedule a second showing immediately with the inspector. With the inspector. So you could do this on a first showing too, but you don't want, I mean, it's going to be tough to get your inspector there, but preferably you do it on the first showing. But if your buyer's like, yep, this is the one, schedule a second showing immediately, bring the inspector, okay? Try to schedule that thing for an hour, hour and a half. Have the inspector go through the property as you're doing your second showing. They're not going to be able to do a full inspection report. What they are going to be able to do is give you and your buyer some context around their opinion while they were in the house for that hour, hour and a half, because the buyer gets to look at the property. And so there are certain homes potentially where the inspector can say, listen, I think, again, I didn't do a full inspection, but based on the last hour and a half of me being here, I'm going to give you confidence. I think everything's on the up and up. Like, I think everything's okay. It's up to you and your buyer, if you're comfortable with that, to write the offer waiving that inspection contingency. Now, that is you have to be smart about this, you guys. I just gave you my disclaimer. I can see most of you like, well, what about this? What about this? I get it. I'm just giving you some more tactics and strategies to consider, right? Bringing a home inspector on your showing, I think, is very smart. Because I don't know about any of you outside of maybe Dave. I'm not a home inspector. I'm not a construction guy. Our buyers think that we are. I'm not. Hey, what kind of material is on those shingles? I have no idea. You know what I mean? So to bring the home inspector with you on the showing, I think could really, really help you out. Okay, that's number 1. Then number 2, with the appraisal. This is where you call your buddy Steve Frost and you ask him, Steve, can you run this property through the underwriting system to see if we can get a PIW? Steve, what's a PIW?
Property inspection waiver.
Okay, if you guys are not doing this every single time, you are doing your buyer a huge disservice, massively, massively big disservice, because here's what could happen. You could call your boy Steve. Steve said, hey, dude, running the property through underwriting with these terms and this offer and all of these different things, you don't need an appraisal. You don't even need one. So now you can go into the offer waiving the appraisal contingency, which is the huge point of contention, all together by making a phone call. Steve, what do you want to add to that?
Got to have 20% down.
Yeah. That's the big one.
20% down. The other thing with that is, and we did this for a client of Brandon's. We ran it through they were offering above the asking price, but I could only, and it was almost like the same terms. It was like $375, but it was listed at, it was one of Donna's houses.
It was, yeah. We got the appraisal waived.
And I got the appraisal waived at a certain appraised value, but not at the purchase price. So then we just told them, hey, you got to put down your 20%. Plus an extra like $6,000, and we don't have to do an appraisal at all.
So that's such a good point.
Sometimes I can work because it goes off the appraised value. Now, so in the lending world, when you enter in your purchase price and your appraised value. So you can, if you get that waiver at a lower value, I mean, it's up to the client, right? Like, are you comfortable writing this check for this amount? Yes. If you really want the house, we can do it this way, and we can waive that appraisal and improve our chances.
So let me,
appraised value.
Yeah. So if you didn't catch that, what he just said was this. Here was the exact situation. We had a client who was going to write an offer on Donna's listing. We said, hey, we're comfortable based on payment to offer this much more than the asking price. We took that above asking price. We ran that through with Steve. We got that appraisal waived. So now the buyer's in such a better position because the seller and the listing agent, anytime you offer over asking price, what is the first thing the listing agent's going to ask you? What type of appraisal are you going to guarantee this gap? Well, imagine a world, Kim, you can go in and just completely remove all of those concerns by waiving it. And I'll tell you something. As a listing agent, I would much rather accept an offer with an appraisal waiver than appraisal guarantee. Much rather. Because there's still some uncertainties based on if the house still, like the appraisal is the biggest question mark outside of the inspection. To remove that from the table is so appealing to a seller, right? So that's the third thing I would consider when you're structuring your offer.